Drew? Has anyone heard from David? Okay. I'd like to give it another minute or two just to see. Okay, great. All right, this is the Cortez City Council work session / special meeting. Today's Tuesday, November 14th, 2023, and the time is 6:32 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and we'll start with A on the agenda, a presentation by the Pinon Project on homelessness in Cortez. So we'd like to invite you to the podium. Make sure your mics are on. A green button. The button's kind of at the front, and then a green light will turn on.
Hey, there you go. It's on now. All right. I'm Lucia Bueno Valdez, and I am the Homelessness Outreach Coordinator.
And I'm Kelly Willis. I'm the director at the Pinon Project.
Right. So I'm going to give a brief description of what homelessness outreach is. So homeless outreach utilizes a strength-based approach to encourage the growth of a healthier community by supporting walk-in clients and focusing heavily on homelessness prevention through the coordination of community services, supports, and resources for unsheltered people, which I call my friends and relatives. Following the Built for Zero framework, this position is creating a by-name list of unsheltered individuals in our community by building trust and rapport within the unsheltered community with the ultimate goal to end homelessness. We want to reduce homelessness so it happens less frequently and for shorter amount of time. We have recently hired 3 more outreach navigators. We have They are working very hard to serve our friends and relatives. At Pinon Project, our lobby is a makeshift day center. We have been funded through a Colorado Transitional Housing Grant for a day center. We are just waiting for space. We are looking for space. And when that happens, we will have filling a gap for our friends that are out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. A lot of our participants, especially the ones that hang out a lot at Pinon Project, aren't currently able to go into the shelter for various reasons. So our outreach navigators and I, we spend a lot of time out and about in the parks, in encampments that are around, searching for folks that are unhoused and maybe aren't aware of the resources available to them. We're making sure that we're doing a lot of resource connection, letting them know where the soup kitchens are, letting them know how they can access showers, how they can get medical care. We have a Hustine street medicine team that comes from Shiprock, New Mexico. They're part of IHS, and they come and they serve beneficiaries and non-beneficiaries on a weekly basis. Our current by name list has 324 people on it. We have case conferencing 2 times a month. The second Monday of the month, we have what we call resource navigation, and that is basically staffing our individuals experiencing homelessness and really finding them other resources in the community and helping to support them in navigating things to get to housing. We really want to help support them either figuring out how they can go back to maybe family living. Maybe there's a situation somewhere, anywhere that they can reconnect with somebody and go back to that situation, or get on track for housing in our community, either subsidized housing or rentals. We also have just started part of the statewide expansion for supportive housing initiative. Is that correct? It is, I had to check. We have been granted 10 housing vouchers for very low income, low barrier housing opportunities for folks. So that's folks that could not get housing through maybe some of the other avenues like Section 8 vouchers or Housing First vouchers and things like that due to a multitude of reasons. It could be their past housing record, their criminal backgrounds, things like that. So we are seeking out those individuals and supporting them through those swishy housing vouchers. Those individuals are pulled directly from our by name list, and they have to be high Medicaid users. So that's a great opportunity for at least 10 folks, and hopefully we will have those all filled by December, and we will be granted a lot more vouchers soon. We also have a system coordination meeting once a month on the fourth Monday of every month, where we invite system leaders and really just providers to come in and help us make plans that follow the Built for Zero framework to ultimately to achieve our goal of ending homelessness, or to have our community reach functional zero, which means that when there are gaps in housing, we are able to quickly fill those gaps. So if we are having, for example, 42 units available for immediate move-in, so that means like within a month, then we want to keep our list of people that are experiencing homelessness under 42. So it's not really, people think when we say we're going to get, our goal is to get to zero, it doesn't mean we're having zero homeless. It's that our community can balance out the number of people that are experiencing homeless with our housing inventory. And so we really want to fill that gap. We want to say that if we get 42 people that are homeless, we're going to have the possibility of housing them quickly so that their stint of homelessness is very short and brief. And that leads to our family housing navigator. She came to us through a grant in collaboration with Montezuma County Department of Social Services. The grant had to be a collaboration with the nonprofit and the county. And so she serves our unhoused families. So any family that is in danger of becoming homelessness or currently experiencing homelessness can come to her. There's some very limited flex funding for that. And she really is working really hard to build relationships with landlords, with our housing authority, just throughout the community, trying to help those families stay housed or get rehoused quickly. I think we have housed, out of her 47 clients that she has done light case management with, she has housed 17 families in the last 3 months, which is a big success for her, for all of us really. Housing is a prevention. Housing keeps people out of emergency rooms. Housing saves dollars at the county, state level, federal level. Because of those things, a family that can shop and buy groceries and cook healthy, affordable meals is using a lot less of their benefits on things like microwavable food, ready-to-eat foods, and that really causes health issues, so they're using the emergency room and things like that. If you don't have a place to store medication or take care of health needs, including mental health, you just don't have a place, and so you can't take care of those things, so they become really high Medicaid users. I think you've covered it. I think I've covered it. Any questions?
Well, thanks for coming here and giving us an update. It's been really great to hear about kind of the increased presence of like the homelessness services that are happening in the community, especially like in the last couple of years since that first meeting in the park where we kind of started that conversation around Built for Zero. And I know that the biggest issue at the time was like data, like the data for that. And so I'm curious how that's going. And wanted to ask, so the vouchers that you have for the Pinon project, are those separate from like the housing solution, like the housing solutions for the Southwest, that pool? And yeah, that's what I got right now, and then I'll let some other people ask some questions.
So the data has increased greatly because we are I'm out physically seeking those people. I go to encampments on a regular basis and serving them with things that they need that we consider basic needs but are life-saving needs for them has really spawn them to bring their friends. They'll say, hey, Johnny also needs a sleeping bag. He also needs socks. And then pretty soon, Johnny brings his friends. So we have went from when I started the count, we were at like 82 to 324 just on our by name list. HMIS is a little bit higher, and that's just another database that we collect data on because we fortunately have made some good partnerships and have other agencies sending me names and things like that of people we can add to that. That's a big part of the framework for Built for Zero. So data collection has really ramped up, and it will more, because that 324, I just want to be really clear, is Cortez area. That is not all of Montezuma County, because that does not include Mancos and Dolores, which does not have a high homelessness population, and Toyac. So we're really just now starting to branch out into those other areas, so we can imagine that number is going to raise quite a bit.
Just for folks here, can you explain what the by name wait list, kind of what that is and what it's used for?
So the by name list is basically a list that was built for us by Built for Zero, and it's just collecting data. It is showing who's homeless right now, what they have, what their demographics are, how long they've been experiencing homelessness. It helps us get a really good look, a picture of, a snapshot of like what's going on in our community. How long does it take someone from the time they start experiencing homeless to be housed? When they become unhoused again, how long does it take for them to become housed upon returning to the active and non-active parts of the list? So it's literally a live snapshot all the time of the data happening in the community. Most communities have a separate data lead that's specifically just doing that. And so for our community, it's just been like really trying to just constantly get those people, get them back in, like what's happening, tell me what happened, like was it a mental health issue, was it affordability? Like that is a really big issue in our community. Housing is absolutely unaffordable for our folks. Low income means someone that makes less than, I think for an adult, single adult, I believe it's like $16,000 a year. So it's the very lowest. So a lot of people think about that like medium spot of maybe 2 working adults. We're going below that for people that are living off of Social Security, A&D, things like that. So it's a very low income. The Swishy vouchers, Housing Solutions in La Plata County also have Swishy vouchers. We're not sharing that pot of vouchers with them. We got our own 10 vouchers for our community, which is a big deal.
Want to speak to the heat assessment?
Oh, yes. Also for our voucher process and for all of our by name list and our coordinated entry that our community is going to be doing separately than the region, we are using an assessment called the heat assessment, and that is a housing equity assessment tool. And so our heat assessment is very different than a VSPDAT, which is a housing tool that's been used, I mean, it's used federally, it's used across the nation. And so ours is looking at a lot more factors that are personable. So we think about LGBTQ, substance use, BIPOC population. There's just, I don't know, it's,
The higher you score on the assessment, the higher you are on the list for housing. And so it's important. Sure, sorry. The higher you score on an assessment, you get to the top of a housing list more quickly. And so if a unit were to come up, you would have priority. But the reason why we chose this assessment was because of the diversity in the community, and that standard assessment tools being used didn't look at all of those factors that really do determine some disparities in our community or other communities as well, those populations that Lucy is talking about. So we're one of the few using an equitable assessment tool to match, to put people on our by name list, but then that same tool will be used to align housing and specific needs according to that tool.
And that specific tool, it's really important to build those relationships with the people that are experiencing homelessness. A VSBADAT can be done. I can do a VSBADAT with anybody in a 15-minute seating, just quickly answering questions and moving on. Our heat assessment really lets us have the opportunity to know our folks, know what's gone on in their past, what the barriers are going to be to keep them housed after we finally get them housed. So the heat assessment is really a better tool for our community specifically.
So, first of all, I just want to say I can't imagine Cortez without you guys and the work that you're doing. I mean, this is just really incredible, and you kind of took me back when you said 342. That number is a lot bigger than I thought. It's a little sad to hear it, but it's also a nice wake-up call. Lucia, you mentioned some of your partners that you work with. Can you maybe talk about like 2 or 3 of the partners that you work most closely with and kind of what that relationship looks like?
Of course. So I feel, well, we work with the CIP team, is probably our closest partner. They they bring us folks constantly. We have a lot of back and forth. When I need their support, they're quickly there to help us out. They're at Pinon at least once a week, supporting one of our friends and relatives. We have a lot of open communication about how we can better support certain folks. You know, there's a small group that are always at Pinon, and when we don't see them for a little bit, we get really worried about them. I will personally look for them we've been under bushes. We look for them everywhere. And when I'm really at the end where we can't find them, we can call CIP and they'll go out and also look for them. So CIP through Access and the Emergency Management Program are really important to our work.
They also have the ability to get some of our folks into rehab faster. So if we can help coordinate that, sometimes they're the icing on the cake to get somebody in the door faster.
And then the Seen Hasim Street Medicine team from Shiprock are extremely important to our teamwork. They come every single Tuesday, but they also come to both of our coalition meetings per month. They constantly provide support. I can call them any day of the week, not only the day that they're coming, and say, hey, I have this person going through this, how can we help them? They will telehealth with them. They will send in prescriptions for them. They come to the jail and support them. I mean, they have gone into the jail and given people their medications and just taken over that care for our individuals. Foot care is so significantly important for our people experiencing homelessness. If you think about like when you can't dry your feet out, you know, they get something called swamp foot that I didn't know anything about until I started this work with street medicine. And wow, that I just could not imagine not having ever any way to dry out your feet, to change your socks, to get different shoes, to get different insoles in your shoes. And they really work with folks with that. So they are very important to our teamwork. And we just have, I mean, across the board, we have really great partners in our community. And I think that's one of the best things about our community is that we do collaborate very well in all aspects for youth, for families, now for our folks experiencing homelessness.
Hospital emergency.
Oh, the emergency room, social workers, super important and very helpful. The EMTs, I mean, I think you all have been really helpful to us. I always say this, but I really, really appreciate, no, not Elizabeth. Oh, I just forgot her name. Library.
Isabella.
Isabella, I was going to call her Elizabeth, I'm sorry. Isabella and Creighton. The work with them at the library and at the rec center has been really important. Having our folks able to go take showers when they're not allowed to shower anywhere else. And I know that behaviors happen, but they have been very graceful and have let me know when things are happening, and we figure out a plan to keep supporting those people. There's not any like they just can't ever come here. It's let's talk about it, let's see what we can do. And that's why the navigators are so very important. They can keep doing that work. Oh, and then we have Outreach Court, which is such an amazing blessing. Like I am so proud of our community for that Outreach Court with Magistrate Padilla and Carla Odell. They're both doing just amazing things. Our friends and relatives who have gone through Outreach Court, I have seen such a huge change in their behavior across the board because I feel like they feel respected. They feel like, oh, well, I did this thing and someone someone called me out on it, but I can work on it in a different way, and they get to choose the way they get to work on it. It's a mental health support, substance abuse support, or working on housing. And I mean, I haven't been there in Access, but I'm sure they've got an uptake in my friends and relatives over there, because they call, make an appointment, they go to their appointment, and they're really engaging. And so Outreach Corps is just an amazing tool that our city's engaging in, and I love it.
It really feels like there's been a lot of nodes that have been connected in the last several years. I know that, like, we've name dropped the Homelessness Task Force, or like the coalition, when Judge Padilla was starting to like get the ball rolling with the outreach court, and then I think we even name dropped you guys when Sihasan Medicine came to talk to the community, like over at the hospital, where we had a couple of council members there. But sorry, we've put more work towards you, but it's all good stuff. So it's really great to see how these like partnerships have formed, and how much larger impact you're able to have with these partners on board. So thanks for all the work that you guys do.
Thanks so much, Kelly and Lucia, for taking time out of your evening to update us in the community. I think one of the things I really admire that you guys have done is bring people together and look for gaps in the community and where we're not serving our neighbors. And one thing I'm really excited to see is how that warming shelter develops. And just while you're here, I know it's still like red tape galore and everything, but what's your vision for the warming shelter? Would it be open just in the winter? What hours? What's your vision there?
It'll be open year-round. We have just as many folks out in the heat as we do out in the cold. We are starting to operate now, only it's in Pinon, but the hours will be likely early in the morning as soon as the bridge shelter is closing. We'll have our doors open, and we have at least 4 staff members to staff it at this point in time. So we'll stagger staff, and it'll be open until at least the bridge opens again in the evening. But if we are needed different hours than that, then we'll listen to who needs the shelter and plan accordingly. But we'll continue to do street outreach. We'll have the warming shelter, and it's really intended, as Lucia will tell you, just a place that is respectful, and not only to get out of the elements, but to do basic things like charge phones, take a shower, get your clothes laundered. We'll have laundry facilities, that sort of thing, and just to hang. And then we'll also offer a lot of programs. A lot of our folks that are unhoused come to our evening programs at Pinon, and we know that they're doing it to stay where it's warm. They're also fed, but they're really participating in our groups. They come to our fatherhood program a couple nights a week, and some of them will come to a parenting class, but more of them will come to our recovery classes as well. So we'll have groups in the day shelter during the day as well.
Great, and I'm glad you've been able to hire more staff, because I know you're busy. So are the 3 outreach navigators, are those separate from the day shelter staff, or are this some overlap?
Not at this point.
Okay.
They're doing outreach now, and they'll move into the day shelter.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much
Thank
for all the hard
you.
work you're doing in our community and looking out for the most vulnerable.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, we're going to move on to be on our agenda, interviews for Planning and Zoning Commission and Cortez Public Arts Advisory Board. Linda, will you remind me how many vacancies we have on each board?
We have 1 opening on planning and zoning and 1 on the arts.
Okay. All right, so we're going to start our interview process. We'd like to invite Gary Welch up, interviewing for Planning and Zoning Commission. And do we have questions? Oh, there we go. So we'll start with Arlena, and we'll just go through the questions. We've got 5 questions for you.
Oh, boy.
Do we? Yeah.
Hi, Gary. Thanks
Hi,
for
how
being
are
here. Okay, first question for you. Please explain your interest in being a member of the Planning Commission.
Well, since my time here in Cortez, I've actually been a resident of Cortez for about a year and a half. But out of that year and a half, the last maybe 5 months, I've been actual full-time. I was a truck driver, so I was over the road a lot. But I got laid off, so I had to come home, which turned out to be a good thing. But to answer your question, since I've been home, I've been really active in figuring out ways to serve the community. The homeless outreach is actually my forte. I'm actually wanting to do affordable housing. I'm founder of my nonprofit. It's called Project Evan, which originally started with ending veteran homelessness. But when I started the company in 2017, the homelessness situation wasn't as bad as it is now. So I expanded to help everybody, and it just developed into what I call marginal homeless folks, which are the homeless people that you wouldn't know are homeless just by looking at them, because these are the ones that actually go to school or have jobs. People like seniors that don't really fit into a senior center because they're still capable of taking care of themselves. People like teachers and first responders, you know, folks like that that have just been priced out of their homes and or communities. Those are the ones that I think I found a niche to be able to help them. So to elaborate just a little bit more, I wanted to develop what I call microhomes, which are basically tiny homes, only they're a little bit bigger, capable of sustaining a family size, well, family size, you know, 2+. But anyway, that being said, I want to give back to the community, and this is one way to do it. You know, I've become part of leadership Montezuma. I'm actually on the Montezuma County Housing and Action Team, and you know, just like I say, I've become really active in serving the community, and this is just a route to develop myself and the community.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Welcome. What do you consider the chief functions of the Planning and Zoning Commission?
Well, I can only imagine because I'm new to this type stuff, but I guess the city has rules, you know, and they have to be adhered to so we can, you know, have some order.
What do you think is the biggest planning? What do you think is the biggest planning issue currently facing the city?
I think land use, actually. I think there's a problem between the commercial zoning and private zoning. I think it started out okay, but with the economy the way it's headed, I think commercial zoning might actually be a hindrance into what we need, for now anyway. If I can, you know, just elaborate a little bit more, things that I've noticed, you know, in my housing projects, in order for me to be able to provide housing for, let's just say, a family, the zone has to be residential, and actually we have what I consider a surplus of commercial properties. So in my opinion, there's plenty of land around. It's just I'm being caught, you know, it's just being hindered by the disparity in the zoning. That's why I say there's more commercial zoning than what we actually need, I think, but it's just my opinion.
What key contributions would you make should you be selected to serve as a member of the Planning Commission?
I'd have to say transparency on that one. Honesty, you know, I guess it is a public servant, so, you know, we have to be accountable to the public. So I just have to make decisions in their best interest.
Thank you. Planning and zoning meets on the first Tuesday of each month at 6:30 PM, and a second meeting could be called on the third Tuesday of each month if needed. Work sessions are held at 5 PM occasionally. Would you be available to attend the work sessions and meetings?
Yes. I get off of work at 1 p.m.
All right, that's all we've got for you now. I think, are we making a decision next meeting? Okay. All right. Thank you so
folks.
much, Gary.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
interest.
Thank you.
Okay, we'd like to invite Bob Bright, our second candidate for Planning and Zoning Commission.
Good evening.
And then we can start with David and kind of work back this way.
Bob, thank you for stepping up. Please explain your interest in being a member of the Planning Commission.
Well, I have a past history in planning. It's, as my letter of interest would indicate, I spent 30-some years as a planner. And then also, I've been in Cortez about 5 years. And I'm starting to, it's a wonderful community. It's really grown on me. And I've kind of gotten into the community. I do biking around and a lot of walking and enjoying a lot of the amenities. But also I'm seeing some issues I think probably should be addressed in the community. I think, plus I'm kind of a visionary. I think that vision of the community is probably important now. And I think I'd like to make that contribution, and I'm ready to make that contribution now.
Great.
Great. Thank you.
Lydia? Sorry.
What do you consider the chief functions of the Planning and Zoning Commission?
I would see two principal functions for it. One would be the case processing as applications from members of the community or the business community in projects to coming forward and making sure those were addressed in a fair, equitable, and professional manner, and decisions made on those according to the guidelines and principles as set forth in the code and staff recommendations and the vision for the community that's already been established. Second would be that far-seeing part of it, where the community should head in the future, trying to identify those critical issues and try and work with the community, with the city council, and with others in trying to address those key issues.
What do you think the biggest planning issue currently facing the city is?
Ooh, trying to pick one, that'd be a challenge. But I do see some issues in the community. I think housing is an issue. Affordability is an issue. I think that needs work. I think aging infrastructure is an issue in the community. I think that needs attention paid to it. I've recently been trying to kickstart a bicycle plan in the city. I think that needs work. I think with the advent of e-bikes, there's a real safety issue coming to the fore, and I think that needs addressed before something unfortunate happens in the community. So I think that, I'm not saying that's the only issues, but I think those are some I see that need addressed.
What key contributions would you make should you be selected to serve as a member of the Planning Commission?
I think it would be a good team member with the Planning Commission. I'd strive to work with the other planning commissioners and hopefully be helpful to them and be a key part of the functioning of that group and hopefully contribute in a way that makes it work effectively as a planning commission, and add my 2 cents worth also on the issues coming before the planning commission, make sure that I analyze those issues before the meetings, make sure I understood the issues, and when I got there I could explain to the other commissioners my perspective and the try and assemble all the information that was available, and like I said, and make sure that good decisions came out of that planning commission.
Okay, Bob, I have the serious heavy lift question here.
Uh-oh.
Planning and zoning meets on the first Tuesday of each month at 6:30, and a second meeting could be called on the third Tuesday of each month if needed. Work sessions are held at 5 p.m. occasionally. Would you be available to attend the work sessions and meetings?
I would have no problem at all.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your time and interest.
Thank you.
Linda, do we have vacancies on our Board of Adjustments and Appeals? Okay. Because we only have one seat for the Planning and Zoning Commission. So whoever we decide, the other one, please consider applying for the Board of Adjustments and Appeals. That meets less often, but it's also a very important piece to our governing. So, thank you. Okay. All right, we're going to move to the Arts Advisory Board. I'd like to invite Josh McIntosh. Jake, okay. Someone put Josh on my... Sorry.
Good evening.
All right, so we're going to have 3 questions for you.
Okay.
So we'll start with Arlena.
Hi, Jake.
Hello.
Please give your name and a brief overview of your interest in serving on the city board for which you applied.
Well, my name is, I go by Jake. It's actually Jacob, but McIntosh. Honestly, I don't know a whole lot about it. I was speaking with Eric one night down at the zoo gallery, and we got to talking about the Sunflower Theater, and a couple weeks later he hit me up and said, hey, I think you would be good for this. You should put in for it. So here I am.
Great.
Seeing what I can help bring to the area.
Welcome, Jake. What attributes and skills would you bring to the Arts Advisory Board, which you seek to serve on?
I am a local musician. I do play around. I'm going to just drop that I'm playing up at Esoterra this weekend for their holiday thing. Shameless plug. I'm very open to all kinds of music. I assume that would be a majority of what I would be doing. Again, I don't know. I'm very focused on getting youth involved, which is, you will hear me preach that till I'm blue in the face anywhere I've ever lived. There's not enough for the kids to do. Thank you.
What instruments do you play?
I'm a guitar player and a singer, and I used to play the tuba.
Huh?
Yeah.
So the question, give a brief description of your applicable background and education.
Well, I've been playing music in some form or another since, well, 5th grade, if you want to count elementary band. I've been in several performing groups. I marched in a drum and bugle corps. I did theater and dance in college for many years, so I'm very familiar with performing arts in that aspect. Maybe not what other people would enjoy, but modern dance doesn't go over well in a lot of places. And I've just been playing, just spent the last 20 years just playing when and where I can.
Great. Thanks.
Okay.
Those are the questions we had for you.
Perfect.
Appreciate your interest. All right, then I'd like to invite Anthony Beadle.
Hello.
Hi. All right, we'll start with David. We've got the 3 questions for you.
Okay.
Is your mic on?
I'm sorry, sir, I can't hear you.
Sign language. Please give us a brief interview of your interest in serving on the city board, which you applied for.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about art, and I've grown to love this town. At first, I really kind of hated it. moved here from Honolulu, so yeah, it was a little slower than what I'm used to. But the first time I came here, there was just something about this town. I don't know what it was, but it brought me back. This wasn't my destination point, so I just genuinely feel like I want to help.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. The next question is, what attributes and skills do you bring to the board, or to the art, would you bring to the arts board?
Well, I have a plethora of skills. I'm a computer whiz. I design websites for fun. You can actually visit my most recent one's called The Good Life, petsupply.com. I'm sure you guys are aware of the business owner because you just gave her an award. I helped her earn it. I just work behind the scenes. I hijack words online, and I insert those words into my websites, and my websites just end up on top of Google for some silly reason.
And can you give a brief description of your applicable background in education?
Yes, I spent 10.5 years in the Iowa Army National Guard, where I served as a communications specialist. I handled encryptions, I trained soldiers, I tried to set an example, but my mouth got me in trouble a lot. I went to college after my time in the service in the University of Hawaii. I'm originally from Iowa, so just thought if the government was going to pay for my education, I might as well enjoy it. So I went to Hawaii. There I studied research psychology. My focus is primarily in statistics and analysis. Since then, I've maintained several professional certificates. One of them is a data analyst. So I'm very quick at reading stuff and rendering a very accurate rendition of what that should be to you. So kind of like a computer.
All right, great. That's all we've got for you, and thank you both for your interest. And so we'll make a decision in 2 weeks at our next meeting. And I encourage you to stay engaged, all of you who have applied.
Okay.
So thank you.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm sure they aren't.
Yeah. All right, so then we're going to move on our agenda to C. We've got term limits discussion, a consideration for Cortez boards and commissions. Here?
Yep, good evening, Mayor and Council. If I can get my presentation up on the screen, please. There we go. It's in front of council. There we go. Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. About a month and a half ago, Council requested that we discuss term limits for boards and commissions. So we prepared a presentation for you this evening for you to consider. So I'd like to start with our current system to fill vacancies. Normally, we only open it up at large 2 times a year. That would be in May and November, unless vacancies occur earlier. Most of our terms throughout are 3 years. Once that happens, expiring board members are notified, and then a public notice is sent out, and I'll explain that in just a minute here, what that means. And then our process, of course, is, get a letter of interest, and then interviewed by council, and then council makes that decision on who to appoint. So public notice. What that means is that we send it out, and we have a whole schedule here of where we send that. And now in Cortez, in this part of Colorado, there are no central news outlets per se, so we have to use multiple. And this is the list that we use, including Mr. Chuck McAfee's email list, which seems to be rather effective at times. So I'd like to present to council some arguments in favor of term limits. Of course, one of those is to bring new people and energy to our boards, which is important. It does help us overcome stagnation. And we would receive, more diverse perspectives and ideas. And, one of those things is try to attract even younger people in our community to serve. All of those are pluses, but here's some arguments against. It is difficult attracting and retaining volunteer members. Right now, we do have 46 seats to fill across all boards, and if we were to implement term limits, it would likely result in losing persons who are interested, willing to serve, so they would limit out, and then we perhaps would have empty seats where, normally we could have them on the board. And then, of course, it usually takes some time to get spun up on what your particular board is or commission, and therefore we would lose some of that institutional knowledge and skill build up over time. And of course, there is a bit of a steep learning curve on some of these boards and commissions, especially like planning and zoning. So here are some considerations for the council. Now, we did some research and found out that many larger municipalities in Colorado have at least some sort of limits placed on their boards. Even so, and I talked specifically with the manager of Centennial, they still have a hard time filling some board positions, although others, people are kind of beating down the door for those, so it just depends. Now, cities more our size do not generally have term limits, but that does not mean we should or should not have them. The Cortez is Cortez. We would definitely have difficulty attracting residents who are interested in participating in local government. We already have that problem, and this may exacerbate that. And we could potentially lose very knowledgeable volunteers that already make strong contributions. So those are just considerations for you. So here's 3 options for you to consider. Number 1, we can maintain the current system, and after each term, those board or commission members need to basically reapply and be reappointed by council. Or, if we have other interested candidates, perhaps, a different one could be selected. Or, option 2, impose term limits upon all boards and commissions. That's a definite possibility we can do, and we can do that at the pleasure of the council. However, if we're going to do that, you may wish to consider option 3 in that we would exempt planning and zoning just because of the steep learning curve on there, but that may or may not be agreeable to you all as councilors. You would have to discuss that. So I do have a few recommendations if you were to impose term limits. First of all, we would ask that you form an annual appointment committee, and I've given a suggested makeup of what that would be of 5 members. And then that committee would actually make recommendations to council for appointments, so it would kind of be a bit of a screening process versus just council interviewing every candidate as we do now. Also, we would suggest that you consider creating term lengths of 3 years and then limited to 2 terms. And then also we would consider or suggest to you that you consider at least limiting those board appointments, only 1 board per person. So with that, that is kind of the long and short of it, and would invite council dialogue, questions, or discussion.
So I brought this topic up with council because I'm torn between the, protecting institutional knowledge, but also kind of opening the opportunity for new people to come on our boards. And maybe it's just a matter of making the process more defined, that there isn't term limits, but we interview people each time their term is up and then make a decision. I don't know, I kind of wanted to discuss this with council and see what your thoughts were. I mean, and we don't even have to make a change, it's just, just kind of having a good discussion around this.
Yeah, I remember when this was brought up that maybe one of the concerns was kind of fear of coming in, new people coming in when there's this kind of older, folks that have been there for a really long time. I guess I'm kind of curious as to how we're onboarding new board members to those boards.
So the answer is it depends on the board. Generally, it's the actual board itself, like Arts, they pretty much do it themselves, where Parks and Rec, Creighton has his own system for that. P&Z, even though we haven't done that because we're waiting to fill that last vacancy, there would be some training provided to all of them equally. That, you know, be provided by either city attorney's office or search or some entity like that. In our case, it'll be our city attorney's office. It just depends on the board. But in answer to your question about, you know, fear of, you know, going up against an incumbent board member, I think that's a real fear. But I also think, were you not to select term limits, council could be the backstop for that. And, you know, people, in my estimation, people need to, if you want to serve, you need to be courageous enough to apply.
So if you had a 3-year term and you served 2 3-year terms, you would be ineligible to run again immediately. But how long between
We would have to
termed out and when
design
you
that.
could run again?
Yeah, that's not set. We would have to design that. That would all be part of the ordinance to do that, and council would have to approve it. We would suggest something like sitting out a term, the 3-year term or something, you know, it kind of, you know, it's a timeout, but, you know, you're not barred for a decade, as it were.
I kind of like the idea.
I like the idea of running it like how we run council, where it's a 2-term limit, and then you have to sit out for a term. So it's like you can still come back in after you take a break, because I think people too burn out without realizing it as well. I do it. I've seen it with others as well. And I like the 3-year terms. I mean, 2 3-year terms, that's 6 years. That's a good chunk of time to serve.
I kind of like the idea of maintaining the system we have for a few reasons. One, I think that there have been long periods of time where we haven't had anybody apply for a position. We really have to beat the street to get somebody to do it. So I feel like with the candidates that we saw today, there are people that have a really direct interest. They probably wouldn't lose necessarily that focus. And I would assume that they would bring a passion to the board because of their interests. But having said that, there are a couple of changes that I think we could do. The first one is that I think the applicants, regardless if they're, you know, maybe reapplying, well, not if they're reapplying, they would know, but especially if they're new, I think that they should go to a meeting, and I think that they should meet the other people who are on the board and ask questions of that board and really find out whether or not they are a good fit for that board. And if their interest is still there after that, then that's kind of where that process begins. I think in a way, we're kind of doing it backwards. So to have them come to us first and say, oh, you seem like you would be really great on the Arts Council, but not give them the opportunity to go to an Arts Council meeting and vet it for themselves so they can really, you know, we're really doing that. Like maybe maintain the process but slow it down, I guess. And then really kind of the second one would be, I would be interested in reforming some of our questions so that they're a little bit more robust. They're really, to me, super general. So maybe sitting down and asking the members of those boards to help us form what those questions are so that they're not so general, and maybe they're more specific to being on that board and then some of the attributes that they could bring. I think maintaining the system we have but beefing it up a little bit would be kind of my preference.
I think too, I just want to note that my understanding is we did just start advertising these board positions outside of just solely on the job postings on the city website. Like prior to like the last couple years, that was the only way they were really advertised. So it was a very like internal feedback loop in that way. So I'm glad to see more people applying and more use of outreach.
And I like what Matt's idea. Is there a way to maybe have like a more formal application so we can learn more about folks? Because, you know, right now we just request a letter of interest, and in the past I've seen literally someone just say, I am interested, you know, and it's like we don't get enough background. It's intimidating to answer these questions in front of the public and on record. So like maybe just have a better, you know, instead of a letter of interest, like a mini application. And I like the idea of developing the questions from the boards, because they kind of know, you know, I guess what would be valuable to their board. Because my last comment is I also hesitate to limit people to one board, because I've been on two city boards at a time, and I really enjoyed that. And then also with the Board of Adjustments and Appeals, you can have a planning and zoning commissioner on there, so that would be two boards for somebody. Yeah.
I guess I have more of a question than a statement. Is there a problem? Have we noticed any kind of a problem? I'm looking at the list, and when they were appointed, I don't see anybody serving extremely long periods of time. Maybe it just doesn't show on the sheet that I have, but are we fixing something that isn't broken?
Is that directed at me, Counselor, or?
That is a discussion that I'm just throwing out in the
Okay.
wind.
So I
It's
thought it
not,
was
it's
more-
not directed to you, because
Right.
that would force you to say something you may or may not agree with. I want to know, do we have a problem?
I guess I don't think we have a problem yet. I think we've had a lot more interest in our boards than we have in the past, and I guess in the past it would have been more of an issue, like trying to force our hand to get more people involved. But I think maybe it's just formalizing the process more instead of actually putting on term limits.
And that I would agree with. You know, the questions that we've asked here, we don't get to find out about these people. We don't know anything about them. We're asking them for the silliest questions, you know, why do you want to do this? And we don't get into it. And I agree with Matt. I think we need to get into it. I don't think we need to change it, because it isn't a problem yet. Sometime in the future, we might want to relook at it, but right now I don't see an issue.
And Mayor and Council, also, if I could just add to your discussion slightly, so the current system we've got, at the encouragement of Council earlier this year, I think it was really the first of 2023, that we went to this more robust system that we're in, how we're advertising and so on. And we haven't even done it a year, but it has worked. We have got a lot more applicants than we have in the past. So just part of your discussion.
Cool.
Maybe then the term limits at this time, that's kind of a back burner thing we can keep in our back pocket, and moving forward, just revamp the systems.
So, yeah, I guess where do we go from here?
I just need some guidance from council on where, if you would like us to proceed, we'll be happy to do that. If you feel like this should be tabled for now and you know, just tune up our system a little bit, we can do that as well. I just been requesting some guidance from council on where to go next.
Could I offer a suggestion? We go to each one of the board panels and ask them to write up a series of questions on what they want amongst their board, what they think is necessary, because they know the boards better than anybody else, and then we could propose those questions to the candidates.
Yeah, I'd say that, the questions, and then also consideration of like a application process or something, because then maybe some of those questions are asked beforehand, like as part of their application. Oh, and then also what Matt mentioned, going to a meeting. Can we require that and say like, hey, did you go to one meeting, and then?
You know,
Or encourage it?
we could strongly encourage it, and to be quite honest, I mean, you know, if council is wanting to see that a little bit more, and I think there's some real value to it. I think what we could do is just basically make that a box you have to check, that before you apply, have you attended a meeting? And I think we asked that, and that could be a compelling factor for council. We can discuss it with staff and kind of see where best to go with that, but you know, we may just strongly encourage and, you know, by the way, have you, and then check that box, or not, and then you all will know, you know, maybe what the true interest is.
Okay.
I think it's kind of unfair, the question that we have about, you know, what do you think the board does? That's kind of a gotcha if you've never been to a board that does a lot, you know, and has a pretty big impact, like P&Z, for example. I'd like to see people who have a lot better understanding of the board and kind of, you know, what they do, and see that process from the beginning of the meeting to the end, personally.
Okay, for the sake of time, do you have enough?
I believe so, and if I understand council correctly, we will go ahead and tune up our system as described and come up with a little better system, and then maintain what we're currently doing and table term limits for now.
Okay. And this is, you know, we'll be selecting for these boards way before that's done, so this won't affect you guys.
Yeah,
but-
this is nothing to that, so.
Yeah, okay. All right, general council discussion. Does anyone have a topic they want to bring up? Okay, so then we'll adjourn this work session. The time is 7:31, so we'll start our regular meeting at 7:35, just to give folks a break. Okay.